Okay, well, hello, and thank you for joining me. I'm Jennifer Smith, your favorite or friendly, I hate to say friendly or favorite, your friendly neighborhood naturopath. And note that I'm not a medical doctor, and this information has not been evaluated by the FDA. Therefore, it is not intended to cure, treat, or prevent or diagnose any disease. For advice specific to your unique condition, please consult with your healthcare practitioner and they can advise you. But today, I'm just going to share some secrets for building better bones, and so whether that be in a proactive manner or whether it be to help overcome a condition that's already started. So, as usual, we've got 30 minutes of content followed by 9 minutes of Q&A that you can type into the chat, and I'll try my best to wrap this all up perfectly in 39 minutes. So, with that being said, there's so much to cover, so I'm going to go ahead and just get rolling here. But the skeletal system, I think it's a little kind of overlooked until something goes wrong, and it serves some important functions. So, those main functions, the main ones, there are several others, but first of all, it provides structural support. I mean, we would pretty much be like a jellyfish without it. So that's pretty important. It also helps facilitate movement. It protects our internal organs. So if you think about it, the skull protects the brain, the ribs protect the lungs and other internal organs. There's so much that it does. Your bones also store minerals and then, for future use. And then also a very important feature is blood cell production. So your bone marrow produces red and white blood cells and platelets that are necessary for oxygen transport and immune function. So very, very important. And those are just the key, the most important functions of the skeletal system. And, so the main osteodegenerative conditions in America include osteoporosis, osteopenia, which is kind of the precursor really to osteoporosis, and osteomyelitis, and it's known as rickets in children. And the primary tool used mostly for diagnosis in America is the DEXA scan. And I had to look this up. I've heard of the DEXA scan, but I didn't. I was curious to know what it stood for, and it's an acronym for Dual Energy X-ray Absorptionometry. So dual energy X-ray absorptionometry. Anyway, now we all know what that stands for. And there has been some criticism over the DEXA scan regarding like the comparison metrics as well as the accuracy. So like for example, they're comparing everybody's bone density to that of a 30-year-old. So I don't know. I'm not really sure that a 60, 70, or 90-year-old person's bone density should be compared to that of a 30-year-old. And then also there's some questions with regard to the accuracy. I mean, there have been some error rates up to 10%, but if you get these scans, I recommend that you go to the same place each time, use the same machine and try to get the same technician, which I know that's kind of difficult, but ideally that would help you to produce the most accurate results if you were using the same machine and the same technician each time. And then also maybe consume something with some iodine and pectin to help kind of flush the radiation out of your body. But anyway, and also it's just kind of curious to know that drugs like Fosamax became available shortly after that machine came out. So I don't know, the 90s. So anyway, and I used the term building better bones earlier, and that's exactly what our bodies are capable of doing. As a matter of fact, our entire body is designed to heal itself naturally. Sometimes you just have to look for the right tools, but our bodies are very capable of that. So, and there are really two primary types of bone cells. Let's see here. Everybody's okay. Um, let's see. Right. So there are two primary types of bone cells that keep our skeletal systems functioning properly with regard to building it and creating healthier bones. And so, first of all, there are osteoclasts, which actually break down old or damaged bones, and then there are osteoblasts, which help form new bones. And you need both. You need osteoclasts and osteoblasts. They have a beautiful relationship to one another. You need both of them. And as I often say, most health conditions boil down to two things: toxicity and deficiency. So I'm going to first talk about, I'm going to talk about some of the toxicities and deficiencies that are linked to poor health, poor bone health, I should say. And then we'll get into some things that are helpful for helping you to produce healthier bones because your body is certainly capable of doing that. So, again, as usual, it's a lot of the usual suspects involved here. So, there are a lot of pharmaceutical drugs, quite a few actually, that contribute to bone loss or bone deterioration. Corticosteroids are pretty, notorious for that. So, think like prednisone, for example. Also PPIs, proton pump inhibitors like Nexium, Prilosec, they're pretty bad for the bones. SSRIs, so like antidepressants, serotonin, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. So that's another one. Epilepsy drugs, certain cancer drugs are certainly notorious for deteriorating the bones. Diuretics can do that. Anticoagulant drugs like warfarin are kind of known for that. Also, NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs like Advil and let's see, Advil, Aleve, and then statin drugs as well. So just to name a few, statin drugs meaning for cholesterol. So those are just a few of the pharmaceutical drugs that are known to deplete or deteriorate the bones, help contribute to that. And then also just to note that drugs like Fosamax, Octanel, and Boniva, which are supposed to help treat conditions like osteoporosis, they've been linked to jaw fractures. And I can't think of anything much worse than that. But as a matter of fact, there are some oral surgeons that won't even perform like a dental implant surgery unless their patient has been off of those drugs for at least 6 months. So kind of ironic, but anyway, continuing on, certain vaccines have been linked to bone deterioration. So that would be like, the Hep B shot, Hep B, TB, tuberculosis. And then even though these aren't really, they're not considered vaccines, but they're injectables, Depo-Provera, which is an injectable contraceptive, is known, has been linked to conditions like osteoporosis, and as well as some of the GLP-1s, like for weight loss and diabetes, like Ozempic. So that's another known side effect of that. And then, of course, certain injuries, which, we can't always help that. But I mean, there are some things that you can do for like better balance and things like that. But some injuries are just unavoidable, obviously. Injuries, and then, of course, there's some infections as well, like TB, like tuberculosis, osteomyelitis, which is actually a bacterial staph infection. That would be another one. And then conditions like obesity and diabetes, they're direct links to bone deterioration, to brittle bones. And then nutrient deficiencies. So again, I always say toxicity and deficiency. So some of the nutrient deficiencies linked to poor bone health would be a lot of the usual things: vitamin A, vitamin B, vitamin C. And really, the reason for vitamin C is because that's the precursor to collagen. And if you think about it, our bones are made up of a lot of collagen, probably about 35%. And in fact, collagen is the most abundant protein in the entire body. And I always say, don't take it if you can make it. So, there are some good collagen supplements out there, don't get me wrong, but you can get, your body makes collagen through vitamin C, whether that be through supplementation or consuming fruits and things that contain vitamin C. And let's see, there are some other things that I can talk about in a little bit that can help contribute to collagen production. But also vitamin D is very well known. Vitamin D deficiency is directly linked to poor bone health. And a lot of people might think of calcium deficiency, but that's not the case at all. I mean, I would definitely, well, I have to be careful making recommendations, specific recommendations, but I personally would never take calcium supplements for bone health. I just personally wouldn't do that. Most of us get plenty of calcium through diet, but what we need is for the calcium to be shuttled into the bones properly. And that's where vitamin D, K2, and magnesium come in. And so, as a matter of fact, calcium supplements it's just kind of an unnatural surge of calcium in the body. And what that can lead to is the calcification of our arteries and, other organs in the body. So there's lots of information online about that. That's even mainstream. So just something to consider. Again, I have to be careful making specific recommendations, but if it were me, I would not take a calcium supplement. And let's see what else. A lot of trace minerals like boron, silica, copper, zinc, those type of trace minerals. We don't need a lot of them, but we need some. And so I'll elaborate on those more in a bit as well. And then omega 3s are always, well, I should say deficiency in omega 3s can lead to poor bone health. And I think I mentioned magnesium. You can get that in leafy greens and things. And I mentioned K2. And again, I'll elaborate on that more in a bit, but also seed oils and sugar. Again, it's a lot of the usual suspects that I talk about here that can lead to poor bone health. And when I say seed oils, that's pretty much anything that you're going to find in processed food, certainly in fast food and in most restaurants for that matter. That would be like your, corn oil, canola oil, cottonseed oil, and like sunflower oil, corn, soy, canola, cottonseed. Those are, some of the main ones. So if you're going out to dinner, especially at fast food restaurants, anything fried is going to be fried in those oils because they're cheap. And, also like they put it in salad dressings and all kinds of things. You're going to find those. So you're always going to be best off to eat at home, to cook at home, or, I know occasionally we do go out, but anyway, let's see what else. Heavy metals like settle in the bones, like lead in particular. And I've talked before about sources of lead, and that's environmental contaminants. A lot of tap water contains lead. It's not just a Flint, Michigan thing. It's in other areas. So lead in tap water. A lot of cosmetics. I've mentioned this multiple times that a lot of name brand lipsticks, for example, contain lead. And ladies, there are a lot of women on this call tonight. What is the first thing that we do when we go out to dinner after we eat? Well, we reapply our lipstick because we've eaten it off of our lips along with our food. So just some things to think about. There are a lot of good natural brands out there that do not contain lead. So most things that have a TV commercial, are going to be bad for you. And the same goes with cosmetics. Another thing that can contribute to poor bone health would be a sedentary lifestyle. And I think we all know that contributes to a lot of things. Alcohol consumption is another one. Fluoride. Oh my goodness. If you do nothing else for yourself, please filter your drinking water. If you're a municipality, which most do, are still putting fluoride in the water, oh my goodness. Try to get that out. Not all water filters remove fluoride, but fluoride deteriorates your bones and can lead to bone cancer even. And then another thing that's notorious for it is soft drinks, pop, soda, whatever area you live in. The phosphoric acid eats away at the calcium in your bones. So you want calcium in your bones, you don't want it in your blood and, other organs, but fluoride is a big one for that. So, finally, the word is getting out about it, and there are one by one municipalities that are removing the fluoride from drinking water. And I could talk all night about that whole topic. But anyway, fluoride in soft drinks are two huge ones that directly contribute to poor bone health. Now, some let's talk about some ways to improve bone health because there are lots and lots of things that you can do. And so some of them are obvious, such as avoiding the aforementioned, drugs and injectables. Like if you can find a natural solution for them, that's always going to be best. And also, there's so much that you can do for type 2 diabetes. And, I found it interesting for whatever reason, type 2 diabetes is harder on the bones than type 1, even though type 1 diabetes is a far more serious disease and there's a lot less that you can do for it. Type 2 directly affects the bones. So there's a whole lot you can do about that. Also, stress reduction because stress contributes to an acidic environment in our bodies at pretty much the same way that processed food does. And it's that cortisol surge, so getting stress levels under control can certainly help with bone health and so many other things for that matter. And then of course increasing nutrient density, I talk about that a lot. Just really look for whole foods, clean grass-fed beef, pastured organic chicken, wild caught fish, brilliantly colored fruits and vegetables. And I think I said last week, eat the rainbow. So please don't be eating Skittles, but those dark leafy greens and brilliant berries, all of those things are going to be rich in the minerals and nutrients, including the trace minerals that we need, like boron and copper. Some of those things, again, we don't need a lot of them, but we do need some. And junk food, I guess I'll just call it, often depletes those nutrients. For example, I used to give my kids magnesium for during Halloween years ago when they were little because I knew they were going to be eating a lot of candy, and sugar depletes minerals from the body, especially magnesium. So that was one little trick that I pulled on them. I've pulled many tricks on those poor kids of mine over the years, but it's always for their own good. So let's see what else. Last week I mentioned at the very end of the call the doctrine of signatures. And that's something that to me I love. I find fascinating. You can look that up online. You'll see a chart that shows what all kinds of different foods and the main things that they're good for. So I talked last week about how walnuts, for example, we were talking about brain health, and walnuts are good for the brain. And when you look at a walnut, you can see like the two hemispheres on there. So the foods that you'll see on the doctrine of signatures will resemble the body parts that they're especially good for. And I'm not sure if this is on the doctrine of signatures. I think it probably is, but celery would be an example. And celery, if you look at it, what does it look like? I mean, it's kind of shaped like a bone. And celery is rich in trace minerals that our bones need. So that's a commonly known good food for our bones. Let's see what else. Prunes. Prunes are rich in all kinds of minerals that are good for the bones. In fact, there is a clinical study that you can find online that shows that I believe it's eating 6 prunes a day can have dramatic benefits for bone health. Now, I'm going to warn you though, you probably don't want to start out eating 6 prunes per day. You may not be able to get out of the bathroom if you do that. So I might start small or just maybe kind of incorporate them into your diet on, every now and then. But anyway, healthy fats, I talk about that a lot. Give yourself an oil change, avoid those bad inferior oils, and use gosh, I don't know why I'm just drawing a blank here. Olive oil, extra virgin olive oil, avocado oil. Let's see what else. Coconut oil. Those are, the healthier oils that are going to be especially good for you. Nuts and seeds. Just again, just whole foods. Nothing. If it's man-made, chances are it's going to be bad for you, and it's going to be depleting your body of important nutrients that it needs. But if God made it, it's going to be good for you. That's it really is. It's as simple as that. Now, what about dairy? I do get asked that a lot with regard to the bones. And that's kind of oh gosh, that can be a heated topic. A lot of people are lactose intolerant and just intolerant of dairy in particular. And part of that is because our dairy is not what it used to be. So if you do consume dairy, I would consume it from either goats or A2 cows, and raw, unpasteurized, unhomogenized, because that whole modern pasteurization and homogenization process, it really destroys the protein molecules in it, and it's just really an unnatural product that we're consuming, which then causes a lot of mucus production and is really not good for the bones. So, cheese. Obviously, raw cheese is going to be healthier than regular, but if you do get regular pasteurized cheese, make sure it's real cheese. You don't want those Kraft singles that are, seed oils basically. It's not cheese at all. And cheese contains enzymes and things, so it's much easier to digest than pasteurized milk. But it does contain some good nutrients in that can be good for the bones. There are some herbs, classic herbs that, as an herbalist, that are just known for being good for the bones. And again, I have to be careful here because if you're on a pharmaceutical drug that has some drug interactions, I'm not making recommendations. I'm just saying if it were me, I might consider herbs like stinging nettle, alfalfa, horsetail. Horsetail is rich in silica, which I think I mentioned is good for the bones, turmeric, parsley. So those are just some classic herbs that are really known as being good for the bones. Let's see what else. Supplementation that you may consider vitamin C. You can't go wrong with vitamin C. I always say that vitamin C is highly underrated, but again, if you do supplement, go with a whole food based versus just the cheap ascorbic acid that you're going to find like at Walmart or Walgreens, places like that. And let's see, vitamin C, vitamin D. If you do supplement with vitamin D, make sure it's a D3. But again, sunshine is going to be your best bet, that morning sun. And, it can make a dramatic difference just, within 15, 20 minutes. And if you've had your gallbladder removed, I think I mentioned that last week, or I think I've mentioned it multiple times, you very well may be deficient in vitamin D, regardless of how much sun that you get. And that's something you may want to consider supplementing because again, vitamin D, K2, which again, you're going to find that in things like leafy greens. That helps. Vitamin D, K2, and magnesium will help shuttle the calcium into your bones where it needs to be rather than free flowing throughout the body. So those are important nutrients. So look for foods that contain those nutrients or, the sun in the case of vitamin D. And then, you may want to consider supplementing accordingly. And then CBD oil is another, I guess you would consider it a supplement that is known to contribute to bone health. And again, just like with anything else, you want to make sure that you get a quality product if you do choose to use that. So, and then also, I think everybody knows that weight-bearing exercises and resistance exercises are particularly good for bone health. Even just general, like weightlifting with the small dumbbells. You don't even have to be using really heavy ones, even smaller ones, and things that help contribute to balance is particularly good because Balance and bone health really go hand in hand. You really, you want to have both. And so, riding a bike is very good for balance. That's one of the best things that you can do for balance is riding a bike. Another thing would be rebounding. Just bouncing helps stimulate bone cells and so much more, but it also is very good for balance because your brain is doing a lot of different things while you're bouncing to strengthen your coordination and your bones at the same time. And you don't have to be, jumping 10 feet high like on a trampoline, but I have a small rebounder that I absolutely love. I have the Bellicon, the German-made Bellicon, which is kind of the Cadillac, and I absolutely love it. A little goes a long way. I mean, 5 minutes on that is plenty. 5 minutes per day can be very beneficial for bone health. Even walking, but really bottom line, just move. A sedentary lifestyle leads to bone deterioration. So moving your body in any way that you can, do what you enjoy doing. But resistance training and weightlifting, weight bearing exercises are definitely going to be the best. And then of course managing hydration, sleep, and stress. And I often talk about getting your 10 to 2 because that's, those are the hours 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. are the hours that your body does the most intense healing, cleansing, regeneration process. It goes on. So, in other words, if you don't go to bed till midnight, you've missed out on 50% of that intense healing, cleansing, repairing, regenerating hours. So get your 10 to 2, optimize your sleep the best that you can. And I said manage stress. I mean, high cortisol levels are stress hormone that can certainly cause mineral loss. And so, stress can do so much to the body. I often say that to say stress will kill you is almost an understatement. So it can do so much. So get your stress levels under control, whether that be through, deep breathing and, prayer, meditation, just learning to let go, taking a walk. It all kind of goes hand in hand. Getting gentle exercise. There's so much you can do for your body. So, anyway, I guess those are some main things. And there's also a hormonal component, obviously, when it comes to the bones. And most of us tend to think of conditions like osteoporosis or osteopenia being just for menopausal women or postmenopausal. And I'm here to tell you that that's becoming more and more of a problem with men. And I've heard of doctors that say that about 30% of their male patient population has those conditions, and that's because of the steep decline in testosterone levels now. And lots and lots of reasons for that. But again, it all goes hand in hand. All the processed food, the high stress, the synthetic scents, the just the junk food and all of that. So anything you can do to help with your hormones, that's helpful. And I did a call, I don't know, a couple months ago, I guess, on hormonal health on the endocrine system. So you can look that up on YouTube. But anyway, I'm trying to keep in on the proper time amount here. So me keep letting people in here. So let's see. I guess let's talk about patching now because there are a couple of patches, there are actually quite a few patches that can help contribute to bone health, but I'm just going to focus on the two main ones tonight. I try not to overwhelm. I know sometimes I do that, but those of you who are new to the call, when I say patches, what I'm talking about here are these patches here that are about the size of a quarter. You can can see I'm wearing one right here, and I've got several others on other parts of my body, but it's a form of wearable phototherapy that that uses your own body as a power source. So rather than standing in front of or inside of a phototherapy machine, you're using your own body by reflecting back wavelengths of light that we all naturally emit as mammals. Every single one of you on this call right now is emitting light from your cells, from your DNA. And that actually happens. That begins at the moment of conception. When an egg and a sperm meet, a flash of light occurs. So we are light beings, we are electrical beings. And so these patches, think of them almost as little mirrors on your body to reflect back specific wavelengths of light back into the body to produce these beneficial changes within the body. And they're unlike a transdermal patch that you're probably familiar with, such as the birth control patch. That would be an example of a transdermal patch, or the nicotine patch. There are many, many different transdermal patches that are transferring drugs, chemicals, hormones, and other substances into the body through the skin, the dermis. But these patches that we're talking about here are non-transdermal, so nothing foreign enters the body. I had never even heard of a non-transdermal patch before because nothing else like this exists. They're fantastic. And so again, think of them as little mirrors. And as I mentioned, there are several patches that LifeWave produces that can help contribute to bone health. But the two that I'm just going to focus on tonight are, first off, X49. What the X49 patch does is it elevates the AHK copper peptide in the body. And you may have heard of people getting peptide injections nowadays. That's kind of all the rage right now, is peptide injections. And AHK copper peptide, A stands for alanine. The AHK copper peptide is that people are getting injected into them is synthetic. So I just want to make you aware this is very different than that, than getting an AHK copper peptide injection. Instead of getting that exogenous injection, the X49 patch is helping you to elevate your own native, natural, endogenous levels of the AHK copper peptide. And the AHK copper peptide is found in throughout the body, but it's most concentrated in the musculoskeletal system, the cardiovascular system, and the neurological system. Therefore, the benefits are pretty targeted to the muscles, the bones, the heart, and the brain. And as a matter of fact, I personally know of more than several women who have reversed a certain diagnosis that begins with an O by using the X49 patch. Maybe it was a coincidence. Who knows? But but again, it is found in the bones, and again, it's concentrated in there, and it's not synthetic like the injection. So so many benefits to the X49 patch, but bone health is one of them. It can help stimulate the osteoblast and osteoclast activity within your bones that I mentioned earlier to help with strong, healthy bones, and it can also help to help you with retaining minerals in your bones. And then the other patch that I'm going to talk about here before I get to Q&A, I'm running a little behind again, is the X39 patch. And it gets a little confusing. X49 and X39. Again, the X49 patch elevates the AHK copper peptide in the body. The X39 patch elevates the GHK copper peptide in the body. And, G for glycine, A for alanine. And there's so many benefits to elevating the GHK copper peptide in your body with the X39 patch. First of all, one of the many side benefits of the GHK copper peptide is it helps stimulate collagen production. And I mentioned earlier that your bones are made up of a lot of collagen, approximately 35%. And so rather than taking a collagen supplement, I mean, if you do, no shame against that, but This can elevate your native endogenous levels of collagen to help build stronger bones. It also, gosh, it helps with just healing, repair, regeneration process, regeneration of bones, resets over 4,000 genes to a younger, healthier state and reactivates your stem cells. Now, our stem cells tend to slow way, way down throughout our lifespan. And it starts earlier than you might think. It starts around the age of 30 to 35. And, your stem cell activity has been reduced by about 50% right around that time. And if you recall, the DEXA scan is measuring people's bone density to that of a 30-year-old. So, of course you're going to have different bone density, but anyway, and gosh, let's see what else. Resets over 4,000 genes. And, by the time we reach age 60, our stem cell activity has been reduced by about 90%. So you still have stem cells in your body, but they've just slowed way down and kind of kicked back into retirement. So the X39 patch just kind of wakes them up and says, hey, get back to work here. Larry still has a lot of living to do. And so there's so many benefits which with regard to repairing and regenerating and pain relief, so much more. But with that being said, gosh, I'm not doing so great on time as usual, but I am going to jump to the questions on the chat here and see what we've got here and get into Q&A. Let's see. Looking forward to your topic. I have bone on bone with my knees. Okay, one other benefit, one side benefit with the X39 patch is if you recall, I talked about lead, how lead and other heavy metals can settle in our bones. And I recently had someone tell me we were talking about the subject of paint and lead that's in our environment and pesticides and things like that. And he said, yeah, well, and there's no way to get rid of lead in your body. Once it's in there forever. And I said, oh, but there is. And one thing that helps your body to release heavy metals like lead is glutathione. Glutathione is our body's master antioxidant, our master detoxer. And our liver and our muscles help produce glutathione. But again, as we age less and less, well, one of the many side benefits of the X39 patch is it elevates our native or endogenous levels of glutathione by about 30%. So, again, to help get that lead out. And so, again, so many benefits here. And another side benefit of glutathione, in addition to helping your body to release lead, is it can help to rebuild cartilage. And again, so much that you can do, so many benefits with these patches. A lot of times, bone on bone, your cartilage has been worn down, and I can't imagine how painful that must be. So something to consider there. Let's see, favorite two. A lady had a bone scan and she had been wearing X39 and Eon for 9 months. She went from osteopenia to osteoporosis. She was pretty upset because she thinks that the patches did not help. Oh, I was thinking the other way around. I started her on X49 now. Do you have any other recommendations and where can I get this replay? Okay, so again, with the DEXA scan, keep in mind that there can be a wide range. I've heard like a 10% margin of error there in accuracy. And then also you want to make sure, try your best to, go to the same place, ideally getting the same technician. So there are always some, they're not perfect is all I'm going to say. And the other recommendations to help is just what I went through. Maybe consider, is she on a medication that's depleting her bones or the minerals in her bones? What is her diet like? So on and so forth. Is she getting any exercise? All of those things. So it all kind of goes together. What is the best website called for the food to eat? What is the website call for the food to eat? What is the website called? I'm not sure. I'm not sure what what that question is. If you can retype it, that would be good. Somebody said this is so good. Thank you. The doctrine of signatures. Okay, what rebounder do you use? I mentioned I have the Bellicon. And the Bellicon rebounder, it doesn't have those hard springs. It's got bungee cords, so it's a nice, smooth, gentle bounce. I also have a micro impact platform. So, there's some, you may have heard of whole body vibration because NASA figured out that when their astronauts go into space, they oftentimes come back with bone and muscle deterioration, and so they found that rebounding or whole body vibration can certainly help with that. And and if you don't have a rebounder, you can just stand and just do some gentle bouncing. That is actually very beneficial. And, when it comes to a whole body vibration plate, you want to have a quality one because some of the cheap ones will kind of jar you all over. There are many different types. Some will move side to side, some move up and down. And there's kind of a lot of debate as to which is the best. I have the Juvent, and it's a micro impact platform. And it's very, very gentle, but despite the fact that you can barely feel it as opposed to a traditional vibration plate, it actually goes deeper and is so good for bone health. In fact, there are certain physical therapists and osteopathic doctors that use the Juvent. How does bouncing help bones other than leg bones? It helps stimulate those osteoclast and osteoblast activity. And your body knows that if you're just sitting, if you have a sedentary lifestyle, that you must not need your bones is basically the signal that you're sending your body if you're not moving. And so certain exercises, like bouncing, like I mentioned, gentle bouncing, like rebounding, walking, weight bearing, resistance training, that's sending the signal to the brain, or I'm sorry, to your bones, that hey, you mean business, and you've got that structure, you've got a body to support. Because again, that's one of the functions of the skeletal system is structural support and weight bearing. So it's really sending that signal. It's releasing the osteoclasts and osteoblasts, the minerals and things like that you need to hold up your body and to keep it strong. Let's see. I think I answered all of the questions, and I'm a little bit over time, but somebody asked, how can I get this replay? I posted on Telegram. I have a channel on there called Pursuit of Patchiness. I'll post it on there, and I'll post it on YouTube, and on there you'll find it on Enlighten Up, which is all one word, Enlighten Up, all one word there. And there are some other places it'll be floating around online. But thank you so much for asking. Thank you for joining me tonight. Keep your bones healthy. They're so very important. Your bones love you, so love them back. There's so much you can do for it. Again, your body was designed to heal itself naturally. You just got to give it the right tools, and there are plenty of them. So thanks again. I'll see you here next week. I appreciate you joining me. You all have a nice evening. Bye-bye.